Hello guys, Escort Slaughter, and welcome to episode 8 of Star Wars Starship Versus, the series where we take two of your favorite Star Wars spaceships, put them head to head, and see which one comes out on top. Now, for a while people have been requesting that I look at Starfighter, so that's what I'm going to do today. And this matchup has been requested a few times, most recently by Momo12320, who asked me to do E-Wings versus TIE Defenders. So that's what we're going to do today, and I just want to say Spadel981 has asked me a few times to do the Munificent class versus a Dreadnought Heavy Cruiser. That's coming later in the week, so don't worry, I got you covered. So for those who don't know, the TIE Defender was probably the most advanced of the Imperial TIE Fighter classes. It has appeared in both Legends and Canon. We're going to be using the Legends version because it's going up against another Legends ship, the E-Wing Escort fighter, used by the New Republic after the Galactic Civil War. Typically when I do these series, I evaluate the ships based on three categories: firepower, defensive capabilities, and fighter support. Given that these are individual starfighters, I think it's pretty clear that I don't need to look at fighter support here, and I'm instead going to look at speed and maneuverability. So as always, I'm going to take these three categories as a whole, also look at intangibles, and see which ship comes out on top overall. I only have one other rule, and that's that each ship is presumed to be piloted by an equally competent person. Alright, so let's now look at firepower, and we'll look first at the TIE Defender. The TIE Defender has 3 wings, unlike the typical TIE Fighter, which usually has 2. Each wing has 2 weapon emplacements at the end. 2 of these wings are used for laser cannons, and 1 for ion cannons, making a total of 4 laser cannons and 2 ion cannons. The ship also had a missile launcher and a tractor beam, although I'm not convinced that the tractor beam was on the standard TIE Defender model, so I'm not going to include it for this matchup. The E-Wing, on the other hand, had no ion cannons, 3 medium laser cannons, and a similar missile armament. So at least in my mind, the TIE Defender is clearly more well armed. Alright, so let's now look at defensive capabilities, and this one is kind of tough because both the TIE Defender and the E-Wing were considered top of their class at the time they came out. What I mean by that is both used cutting-edge technology, the most advanced shielding and other systems that they possibly could. And I'm really not going to go too in-depth into this section because, again, we don't really know a whole lot about the specific numbers, and shielding as a whole is kind of a nebulous idea. So just because the E-Wing came out later, I'm going to give it a very slight edge. And that's based simply on an idea that both ships used the very best of the technology that was available when they came out, and the E-Wing came out slightly later. I will also say that the E-Wing made use of an R7 unit, or at times an R2 or R5 unit, which would help with repairs and probably other aspects of flight, which kind of convinces me even more that the E-Wing probably had a bit of an advantage in defensive capabilities. Alright, so let's now look at the speed and the maneuverability of these two ships. Thankfully, when compared to shielding, several legend sources actually give us some hard numbers here, and those are the old Star Wars fact file magazines and the new Essential Guide to Vehicles. The TIE Defender is said to have a megalight speed of 144 to 180, while the E-Wing is said to hover around 120. Now, megalight is essentially a unit used to indicate how fast the ship is in space. So the TIE Defender does have a slight advantage in top speed, though both ships have similar acceleration speeds. However, speed is only really one part of the equation here. We also have to look at maneuverability, and for this factor I think we have to give it to the TIE Defender. I think the TIE Defender's triple wing really stands out here, and although it may not make sense in the real world, in the Star Wars universe each wing helps the ship to maneuver through space. And in my mind, the engine that the ship had, the really powerful engine, combined with its special wings, made the ship especially maneuverable for a ship of its size and weight. And in my mind, I really don't think that that's been matched in Star Wars history. So I'll give this category to the D-Wing. Now, before we look at maneuverables, I just want to mention that many of these stats or these numbers or these ideas on how powerful each component of the ship is have been changed several times. So at one point, the Defender was presumed to have basically as strong a shield and a hull as you could possibly have while still being a starfighter. And at other points, for example, in the X-Wing miniature game, the Defender is said to have like a middle-of-the-road shield strength, behind, for example, a B-Wing. So we also have to keep in mind that a lot of these numbers come from games, whether they be video games or tabletop games. When creating the stats or the rating of a starfighter, game designers aren't necessarily looking to adhere as closely as they can to canon. They're trying to make a balanced game. So all I'm saying is that these numbers should be taken with a grain of salt. Now, on to actual intangibles. There's not really a whole lot I want to mention here. Of course, the E-Wing has the R7, R5, or R2 unit, which will give it some advantage in battle. The E-Wing is also slightly longer, which gives it a larger target profile, though I don't think it's quite as tall. On the other hand, the TIE Defender has a blind spot in the back of the ship that could be taken advantage of by an enemy starfighter. Finally, the TIE Defender was a much more expensive ship, and I think that's really because of all of the cutting-edge technology that was used in it, even when compared to the A-Wing. Alright, so let's look at the matchup, and I'm just going to get this right out of the way. I think the TIE Defender is probably one of the top 3 ships ever used in Star Wars history. And although the E-Wing is a great multi-purpose fighter, I think the TIE Defender basically does pretty much everything perfectly. It's got the best weapons, it's got the best shielding, and it's got the best maneuverability and technology when compared to any other starfighter. And it dominated literally every ship that went against it during its heyday, and I'm pretty sure that it could dominate most ships even afterwards. Well, how did the TIE Defender specifically beat the E-Wing, you might be wondering? Well, I think it's pretty clear, it's in the weaponry systems. The Defender is really just much more well armed than the E-Wing, and it carries concussion missiles and proton torpedoes, has ion cannons, and has more laser cannons. And really, I think any of these factors will just give the ship the advantage. I think that the ion cannons will be able to drain the E-Wing shields in no time, and then it'll pretty much be a sitting duck. I think the extra firepower through the laser cannons will just overwhelm the ship. And I think the combination of proton torpedoes and concussion missiles just gives the ship a little bit of versatility. I will just say that the E-Wing also had some technical issues, which I'm not going to bring up in this video, but I don't really think that there's a whole lot it can do against the Defender, which in my mind just seems like also a more maneuverable and faster ship. Anyways guys, I'm going to give this battle to the TIE Defender, and I'm going to give it to it 8.5 times out of 10. If you guys like learning about starfighters, check out the description. I'm going to put a link to one of my previous videos where I ranked the 5 deadliest starfighters in Star Wars Legends. And yes, actually both the E-Wing and the TIE Defender made the list, and the E-Wing was number 3 and the TIE Defender was number 2, so I've already kind of thought about this matchup. But I don't know, did I get this matchup right? Did I make some mistakes? Did I not count something? How would you guys rate this matchup, and what do you think? Also, which of the ships do you think looks cooler? The kind of old style looking E-Wing, or the very advanced, very deadly looking TIE Defender? Let me know down in the comments, and of course, also let me know which matchup you guys would like to see next. And if you see a matchup that you think looks cool, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Anyways guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. May the Force be with you.